and welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I'll be your host, and it could be Tuesday, it could be Thursday, it could be Friday, it could be Saturday, it could be the morning, it could be nighttime, but after all, it's your podcast. Now, joining me today, I was going to sing a song, but then I realised that would be terrible to give you kind of a clue. But I'm not going to, because that would absolutely murder it, and there's a possibility that this particular person would hang up and then would have no podcast. There's a lot of buzz around this game. It's almost like it's taken its wings and it's wrapped it round the kind of the board gaming kind of industry at the moment. There's a lot of hype, and it's possibly because of the publisher. It's possibly because of the theme. It's possibly because of the lovely little wooden dice and the little kind of dice tower that you use, and the little eggs as well. They're so cute. But we're going to find out, because joining me is the rather wonderful, the rather fantastic Elizabeth Hargrave. So hello, Elizabeth.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
You're very, very welcome. You've already put up with like about 10 minutes of absolute nonsense. So I applaud you. I applaud you 4 times for staying for the ride so far. For anybody who is joining us for the first time, thank you for joining us. The reason that we do this is because it's an addiction and I can't be stopped, and I like speaking to people in the board game industry, and that's as simple as it is. But the other reason it is we like to speak to designers, developers, artists, manufacturers, everybody that's involved in this fabulous hobby. And I got the opportunity to speak to Elizabeth, so that is why she has joined us today. First things first. I normally kind of ask people about their history, but first things first is, how are you doing at the moment? What's mood like in camp?
It's great. This has been really fun.
I just kind of imagine that you must be waking up kind of like in a Snow White type thing, and all the woodland animals are kind of coming in, and the sunshine's coming in, and there's like beautiful music, and you're just getting up and you're smiling.
That is exactly what my life is like. Have you been spying on me?
You're like the Disney animals rocking up at my house. It's like, what's that all about? This has kind of, for a lot of people, it's kind of come from nowhere, and now everybody is talking about Wingspan. And we were talking about this early on. It was like kind of like the analogy I was using. It was like kind of like when Hugh Jackman did like The Greatest Showman, and like everyone's like, because a musical, that's fine, and then people went and seen it and experienced it, and then everybody went kind of crazy for it, and now Hugh was forced to do a tour and not talk about Wolverine, but talk about singing and dancing and being Mr. Barnum. So has it been like that for you, obviously without being involved in the Marvel universe?
Well, my difference is that no one actually wanted to talk to me before, so it's all new. But yeah, for me, the lead up to Wingspan, we finished working on the actual gameplay, at least 6 months before it actually came out. Last spring, and between needing to finish all the art, because we needed unique illustrations for 170 cards, and that took a while, and then just the manufacturing and shipping process, getting it back from China. That all took a while when I wasn't really working on it anymore. I was just kind of doing other things. And then it was all Wingspan all the time. Except I was in the States for the actual announcement on January 2nd, and then shortly after that, my husband and I went on vacation.
Oh, right, okay.
So I was sort of getting these floods of Wingspan reactions like every 3 or 4 days when I would log onto the internet. So that was quite strange too.
Kind of weird to be thrust into kind of like the spotlight. I'll be honest, when we had a brief interaction on Twitter, which was me saying, I'd like to interview I think I said Eric Lang and Isaac Vega. And Isaac Vega ended up coming on the show. Eric, you're still absent. But you said, well, here, have you thought about interviewing a couple of other people? And then I just went, well, do you want to come on? And at the time, I didn't know you were involved in Wingspan, so it was a complete.
I didn't realize that.
It was a complete kind of like coincidence, and then I kind of like sat there. I was like, I better check this person out and find out what's going on. And I was like that. Wingspan. Where have I heard that name before? Oh, it's like, oh my goodness! I've just been extremely kind of slightly cheeky to the person that's potentially made one of the biggest games of this year, and it's only January. So that's that. So sorry, basically.
I was being cheeky in the first place. It just makes me crazy that there are so many podcasts that are all male, and I believe that my cheekiness to you was, here is a long list of women you could have on your podcast.
I have lots of women on my podcast.
Which I have said to many people, and I appreciate it. It's changing. There aren't so many of us in the industry.
Yeah.
As a proportion.
Which is kind of... Do you think that's changing? Do you think that's getting there?
I do think it's changing. I think there are a lot of structural reasons that it exists in the first place, but I think people are breaking through some of them. So,
here's another question though. But do you want to be known as a female board game designer, or do you not just want to be known as a designer?
Yes and no. I mean, I want my games to be judged on their merits, right? Like, I don't want special treatment of like, oh, Wingspan is good for a game designed by a woman. The kind of thing.
Take that pat in the hand and there, dear. Well done. Go you.
But it does mean something to me because there are so few visible games, games that have really gotten press and widespread attention by women. And I think it's important for people to have that image in their heads that that's a thing that is possible. Yeah.
How did you get involved in the hobby? I mean, in the first place?
It was a conversation with a group of friends. So my friends that I spend the most time with are all big outdoor people. Like, all summer we play very few games and are just like going camping and stuff, and maybe we'll take something camping with us. But so anyway, so we were playing, I don't remember what game, maybe Carcassonne? This was years ago. And had this whole conversation about, like, why are there no board games about anything that we are even remotely interested in? Like, why are we playing this game about building little castle walls and whatever, trading random goods and cutting down trees and mining ore in places. And so the conversation sort of evolved into like, okay, maybe I have to make that game, and what would that look like? So
did you just go straight into... Did you just go... I mean, how long ago was that? Was that a little while ago, or have you been...
Oh, that was years ago.
So have you been creating kind of games since then, kind of playing about with the cardboard?
So Wingspan was the game that came out of that conversation, but that was like 4 years ago.
Really?
It was a long journey. I mean, and it was off and on, and it was just in my spare time, and I didn't really know what I was doing at first. But after a little while, I took it to an Unpub, which is a big playtesting convention that we have in Baltimore, which is very close to me.
Yeah.
I'm north of D.C., which was terrifying because I knew no one. I mean, I broke in from scratch. I was kind of mostly gaming among my friends and knew no one in the industry. So I go to Unpub. I kind of befriended some local folks there.
Yeah.
Matthew O'Malley, who also happens to have games with Stonemaier and other places, several published games. Actually, his son went to preschool with my best friend's daughter, so she introduced us. So he was like the one person that I knew at Unpub when I went.
That's pretty cool, though.
Yeah. No, and it's turned out to be just a fantastic friendship, and we get together almost every week now and play test together. Were
you surprised at kind of the number of, when you were walking into a hobby like this, the number of people that were actually involved in it, though? That there was, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's because of the circles that I've found myself moving in now, but it seems that most of the people that I know that are involved in the hobby, they're playing games, but there's a lot of them that are involved in either the content creation side of things or actually creating games themselves. And I don't know how prevalent that is, and I I don't know if somebody's like, say, fishing or what. Okay, hill walking. You don't. It's not a case like, oh, look at it this way. It's not like you're going up a hill and then somebody turns up and says, well, here, I made these boots for us. I want everybody to try them on, kind of thing. You know.
Yeah.
I don't think you would get that in any. I don't think you would get that in kind of. I know the analogy is absolutely terrible and dreadful, but you know, it's not like you're going to get somebody turning up and saying, "We're not using the normal tent this weekend. I've made my own for everybody to kind of test out and see what they think." Whereas
and I'm going to find 100 people to test it.
Exactly.
I mean, someone does that, right? Like,
must be.
I'm sure it happens in other kinds of product development other than games. You have to get people to try your product.
Maybe there is some kind of whole outdoor kind of camping unpub type thing where everybody kind of meets in a forest or a hill and they're just saying, do you know what I mean? Maybe there's a Jamie Stegmaier of the kind of the outdoors, except it's like Jamie but with a really big beard. He's still got the same jolly smile.
I mean, right? I mean, if you looked up the founder of Patagonia or North Face or, you know, one of those, did they start out like the Jamie Stegmaier of that world? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, how did they do it? It's like, how did they start off at the beginning? Were they sitting around saying, well, I'll tell you what, I used to just wear kind of slightly comfortable boots with friends. And then I got sick of all the other boots that we were wearing. So I went off to myself and I designed my own kind of boots based around my own theme.
I'm pretty sure those people exist.
They have to, otherwise, you know. This is, I don't know. I'm kind of...
We'd all be living in caves and sitting around campfires every night if those people didn't exist in all parts of product development, right?
It has to be, yeah, exactly. It's just, I think, you know, I don't know, maybe there's so many things I don't know. I'm going to get like the outdoor outfitters kind of hobby people kind of chasing after me and saying, you're wrong, we're highly professional, we don't just hang around and wood sanding out stuff to each other. Maybe, I don't know, who knows. Was there more bringing it back in, you know, like a sheepdog rounding up coyotes or something? What has there been a couple of games that you've been kind of developed? I mean, are you the type of person that you're given, did you focus purely on one game at a time? Or have you got games at different stages of development, basically?
I know a lot of people that have multiple games going on, and I actually find that really difficult. So I have a running list of game ideas, and I might flesh out an idea to like half a page of notes of what it might look like when I actually work on it. Mm-hmm. But I'm not like going to a playtesting event and spend, you know, doing one playtest of one game and one playtest of another. Like, I just can't shift gears in my brain like that. Maybe I'll get there someday. Maybe it's because I'm newer at it. But I think I like to focus and stay immersed in something and finish it.
No, I think there are. I mean, I think there's people that's how they do it. They kind of like they're like a head chef or something in a kitchen. They're just going around between dishes and sampling them and saying, right, needs more salt, needs more meeples, needs more worker placement. You know, get a roll and write mechanic in there, and that'll be fine. And then there's people like who just like yourself who would just say, right, I'm going to concentrate on this whole thing until I kind of see it through. And
that said, I've taken games and set them aside and worked on something else for a while and come back to it. But that's not like on a week scale. That's like, I'm setting this aside for a month and working on something else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and there are ebbs and flows in the publishing process too, right? So in that time when I was mostly done with Wingspan, I made other games. And now Wingspan is out. And in May, there'll be a Kickstarter with Button Shy for a game that I designed last summer called Tassimasi.
Tassimasi?
So it's, yes.
What's that about? I'm intrigued.
It is inspired by the Victorian fad of flower language, assigning meanings to flowers and giving people very meaningful bouquets.
Oh, right. Okay. So it's like giving people a message by depending on what bouquet you give them.
Yes. So it's button shy. It's an 18 card game, very light, but I split you choose kind of mechanic where you draw 2 cards and offer them to the person next to you, but one is face up and one is face down.
Right.
And they have to decide whether they want the known thing or if they think they could do better by taking the face down thing that they don't know what it is. And then the cards all sort of affect each other's scoring depending on what you've collected over the course of the game.
That sounds quite complicated for
but you're getting like 4 cards. Right?
Oh, okay, so it's not that bad. I'd probably struggle a bit. Right. I'm not that good with more than three cards. Is probably my limit. Was that the Gen Cant?
That was Gen Cant, right? Yep.
Okay, so does that mean that this year is it going to be Gen Con then for you?
I will be at Gen Con this year.
So there you go. So what's everybody going to do without? Are you still going to make a little game though?
Oh, for Gen Cant?
Yeah.
Probably not. I enjoyed the experience. Well, I don't know what the contest will be this year, right? It's not button shy every year, so who knows?
No,
Maybe I'll have something appropriate. But I found the process of designing an 18-card game a very interesting challenge and incredibly refreshing after having worked on a 170-card deck for a long time before that. But I'm not, it's not my preferred design space.
So Tussie must have come after Wingspan then?
Yes. And it was an incredibly fast design process. It just sort of all fell together at once. And
did you kind of just wake up one morning and went, oh, this is it. This is what we're doing. Give me those 18 cards. I'm going to make that. Or did you look at the Gen Cant competition and went, right, okay, I'm going to work around this, but I've got an idea in my head on how it's going to come together.
Yeah. So they announced the contest, and I looked through my list that I keep of themes that might be fun to work on someday. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh, I could do something with, and I think I had heard both Jeff Engelstein and Jamie Stonemaier in separate forums, right before that, had both talked about how they love I split you choose mechanics and people don't use them enough. I was like, okay, so I picked a theme and I picked a mechanic and I made something up.
And that's coming to Kickstarter next year.
That'll be in May 2019.
This year.
So just in a couple months.
I'm still trying to get used to the old 2018, 2019 kind of split kind of thing. With Wingspan, when you were developing Wingspan, did you at the time think, okay, this is just another game I'm developing? Did you have a plan at the time to maybe, take it to Kickstarter or kind of pitch it to publishers when you first had something? Because there must have been a point through the design process where you went, actually, this isn't just a case of got something. This is actually a case of this is potentially going to be something which people are really going to like.
Yeah, I think I went through a process that a lot of brand new designers go through, which is sort of having to learn what it would actually mean to work with a publisher versus going through Kickstarter. Mm-hmm. And I think Kickstarter has become so popular now that a lot of designers start out assuming that that's what they're going to do.
Yeah.
And only some of them realize how much work it is before they really jump into that pond of TV.
Yeah.
But I really did a lot of reading and chatting, and, I met more people in the industry and realized, doing a Kickstarter is completely antithetical to everything that I enjoy doing and, my skill sets. I'm a big introvert. I don't want to be drumming up support for myself on my own, going and hawking my wares at conventions or whatever you have to do to build up a Kickstarter following. I don't.
Just hawking my wares. I just imagine you sliding up to a convention table and just going, you like some various kind of North American birds, sir? For madam.
Exactly.
Can I interest you in some eggs, sir, madam? No. No, cards? No? Decent artwork? Well, the artwork's not on the cards as yet, you can imagine.
Well, right. And so I decided to pitch it, and I went to Gen Con and met with some publishers and sort of learned how that whole process worked. And then, even at that point, I don't think I realized, like, what a difference it can make to work with a great publisher. But, I mean, so it's not just the marketing stuff, which Jamie Stonemaier really knows what he's doing with, but also... And honed through Kickstarter, right? I'm not saying Kickstarter is a bad route. Like, if that is your personality and you think you would be good at it, by all means. It is not for me.
I think, no, I see this. I mean, I see it all the time. I see it on a regular basis where I speak to like some absolutely fantastic designers, developers, and the game itself is fantastic, and they're just like, 85% of Kickstarter seems to be about the marketing and creating the noise. Right. So there's a lot of games out there, and I see it all the time. They just get cancelled. They get part way through, and the guys are just saying, look, it's not going to happen, or it funds, and then they're just saying, look, this is probably just going to not go the way I'm going to go. And I'm seeing that a lot more, and I think that being a game designer, and I've said this lots of times now, if it's a Kickstarter thing, it's not just about being a game designer. You have to be so many other things, and for some people, that's just not their bag. It's not it's not the reason that they picked up, some sheets of white paper and a pen and started cutting them up with scissors at the beginning. That's not the reason. They didn't want to be doing live streams and.
Right, and like negotiating with manufacturers. And, finding artists. The art part would be fun, probably, for me. That would be my thing. Mm-hmm. And I really enjoyed working. So that was like one of the huge things that going with the publisher did for me was that, Stonemaier sprung for all the art up front.
Wow.
And I just got to like look at pretty pictures coming through every now and then from the artists. Didn't really have to do anything about it.
I'll have that one. I'll have those two. I don't like that one. Kind of thing was it? There was not a lot of I don't like that one. They know what they're doing. But and then, but the development process with Stonemaier, I think, was the thing that I didn't think about or comprehend going into it. Of like how much you can get from a publisher that really knows what they're doing in terms of like, really taking a game that when I went and pitched it, I was like, this game is as good as I can make it. And it was already a good, solid game. People really liked it. And then we just amped it up from there, What's the pitching process like for Jamie? I mean, he comes across as kind of affable and friendly, and he is, approachable. Yes. He's just like, it's
always.
Like, and was it kind of, when you were pitching to him, obviously you would have been aware of his work, and I can't imagine anybody that's designed a board game not 100% being aware of kind of what Jamie's achieved in his back catalogue. Was there did he make the pitching process kind of easy maybe compared to kind of other people? Or was he very I could imagine him being very fair, but then hitting you with the questions that you kind of had to, what about this? Have you thought about that? Have you thought about that? And if you don't have your answers, he's kind of like, okay, I'm going to have to put you to the middle or the bottom of the pile kind of thing.
I would say that in person, all three of the publishers that I met with were kind of Care Bear-like. Like, I didn't have any uncomfortable interactions. Mm-hmm. But the way it worked with Jamie was, so he, and Alan Stone was there actually too, the Stone part of Stonemaier, no one ever sees, but is actually an existing person.
I didn't know that.
And he was lovely. So I met with the two of them in their little Stonemaier room at Gen Con. And they gave me feedback on the spot. But they didn't really ask for my reactions to that feedback on the spot, which is nice. Like, you can't necessarily process all of that in the moment. You're super nervous. And so, and what everyone said, I think this is fairly common. All three of my meetings resulted in them saying, we're going to have an internal meeting within our company after Gen Con to go over all of the pitches that we saw during Gen Con, and we will reach back out to you. So I'm sure there are some games that are like immediately, here's a contract on site, but I think it's fairly common that you get this like, we want to think about everything across the whole weekend. We haven't seen everything we're going to see yet.
Yeah. I think you get themes kind of occurring and things like that as well. I think
yeah.
I think I've seen in the last week, I think I've seen about maybe 4 MOBA style kind of games on Kickstarter, which is obviously this kind of mobile kind of almost like a video game version, little groups kind of attacking kind of like a main area and stuff like that. And I've kind of seen, I must have seen about 3 or 4 of them on Kickstarter, so I wonder if that's kind of like the diplomatic way of gathering everything up and actually seeing seeing kind of what's out there. I can't imagine, I must imagine, there must be some cases where they kind of like say, okay, this is amazing, we need to have this, here's your kind of contract, I guess. But
right, and so then out of that, I did get an email back from them that was like, we are kind of interested, we think it might need some more work before we actually sign it. What are your reactions to the feedback we gave you? And it was like a pop quiz. Thank God I took notes, right?
Just like end up doing a Jedi.
Remind me what the
Jedi
feedback
mind trick,
was.
exactly. Kind of. Well, that depends. What feedback do you mean in particular?
But yeah, so I did take notes and I did have ideas about how I would address some of the things that they said. And he said, okay, great, go do those things and then send me your prototype.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That was
and
exciting.
And then from there, we
exciting?
continued sort of that process of I would send him a prototype and he would write me an email and say, these are some things I'm thinking about, we should work on this, da, da, da. And then I'd go off and work on it for a while longer and send it back to him. So the development was very much like him giving me feedback, but then me actually having to implement it.
Did you have kind of like a kind of, I guess, an unwritten kind of agreement? Or did they actually signed it by that time? Or was it the case they were saying, well, we're kind of interested, but you need to do kind of X, Y, and Z?
They signed it after that. I sent them the physical prototype that reacted to their Gen Con comment.
Ah, cool. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
okay.
And so then I wasn't working entirely on spec at that point. Okay, this is probably really going to happen.
Because it could have been nothing worse than if you were like ended up having like 3 other publishers kind of interested.
Oh,
and then they said,
right.
"Oh, can you change it to this or can you change it to that bit?" And then you end up effectively with like 3 or 4 different games.
Well, right,
exactly
and no
the same
publisher
thing.
wants to put in that energy. I think at the point that they're really going back and forth on the development, they want it. They want to know that it's theirs. When
it kind of sunk in that you're dealing with Stonemaier Games, was there a point in you that kind of you looked in the mirror and went, I'm dealing with Stonemaier Games? And then went, look, it's going to have the little Scythe. I've got Scythe. Well, did you leave like copies of Scythe around and kind of Euphoria and Viticulture? And then when people said, well, what's that? And you went, well, look, you see the Stonemaier symbol? That's going to be a bad game. That's going to be me. I'm part of this family now.
Well, the funny thing is, so I pitched it at Gen Con 2016, and that's the year that Scythe came out.
Wow.
So he was like becoming that big a deal as we were having these conversations. When I was pitching, I didn't feel quite as ballsy as I turned out to have been in retrospect.
Really?
I don't know.
You said you're an introvert. Just slam your hand on the table and says, right, sign it now. Stonemaier, is that even how you say your name? I'm going to call you something else. When you did kind of finish off the prototype, how far was it beyond when you actually started to kind of see the kind of the art, the kind of the finished kind of items? I mean, how long was it before you saw like the dice tower? I mean, the dice
tower was pretty late in the game.
Yeah.
In the development. Because it changed significantly even from that point that it was signed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there was no player mat when I pitched it to them. There was a bunch of the birds had powers on them, but we really amped that up, and the way that they, that they're really an engine that repeats over and over, that came out of the development process.
Mm-hmm.
But at what point did I start seeing the art? He had the artist start on the birds before we were completely done with the gameplay, because we knew that would take a long time. Yeah. I also didn't pitch it with 170 cards. Jamie wanted to really make the deck awesome and bigger. But so... Yeah, so there was like a core set of birds that we knew would definitely be in that they started working on earlier. And then the player mat, we got sort of a mock-up from Beth Sovell of the player mat art, but I didn't see the final art, I don't think, until I got the proofs that were like about to go off to the manufacturer.
Did that take it to a whole different level then? Because I think that must have been like, that must have been completely strange to see kind of like everything that you worked for, and somebody was kind of like taking it to kind of like the next level, and it was a different. Was it how you imagined it, or was it different to how you imagined it? I mean.
I would say it was better.
It must have been a lovely moment.
I don't think I had even like conceived of how beautiful it could be. You know what I mean? And with all the pieces. I mean, the cards were kind of how I imagined them, more or less. I mean, on my prototype, for the first 50 or so cards, I put placeholder art on. You know, I took like a photo of the bird off of the internet or whatever. So you had a feeling of what it would be like to have this nice tableau of the birds. But then as I was building the deck bigger and bigger, I wasn't bothering to do that anymore because I knew the art was coming from somewhere else, and like, why bother? So I was playtesting a lot with this deck that was like half blank cards art-wise, you know? So then to get this beautiful full deck in the end was just, it's amazing.
Have you still got that? Do you still have that sitting on a shelf somewhere with all the parts?
I have like a million... so my old prototype cards, I have like a lifetime supply of 2.5 inch by 3.5 inch scrap paper. We write our shopping lists on them. We write our phone messages on them.
Just like scraping the car when it gets icy. Go and give us a couple of those cards over. Firelighters.
I literally have like a shoebox of old cards there. I just use the scrap paper.
Does anybody, like, okay, we've just had a bit of turkey. Does anyone want a card to maybe pick their teeth? That kind of thing.
So many uses I hadn't even thought of.
I mean, they just got, there's so many different kind of uses. What about things like the eggs and things like that? Because that was the other thing that people have kind of been losing their little minds over. Is by going like, there's eggs in this game. It's like,
I don't know who physically designed the eggs. I never heard a name from Jamie, but whoever did it did such a nice job. So when I always sort of pictured the eggs more like M&Ms or Skittles, you know, that they're rounded but they're flat so they won't roll around. I did not dare to imagine that you could actually, like, they did such a nice job weighting them so that it, like, you set it down and it's not tippy, like they don't roll around. I don't know how they did that. These ovoid objects that don't roll. And if you do knock it over and it rolls in a circle. It doesn't roll off the table. How did they do that?
It's weighted at one end. It's not magic. But I could just imagine, but I could also imagine you kind of like spending hours with your little eggs, just tipping them over and just watching them roll around the table. And then just calling your husband over and going, look, honey, look. Every single time. Look. Click. There, look, see. Every single time. It's just like going, Elizabeth, goodness sake, every single time. I know we've been doing this for 4.5 hours. Can we just leave the eggs alone? How many eggs have you got? Are they all over the house as well?
No, I just have the one set that came in my copy. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. We picked the colors just on, like, Jamie sent me digital photos of the color swatches that Panda sent him for the plastic that they used. I was like, yes, these are relatively egg-like colors. Use those.
So you move on, you get everything kind of finished, and then it starts going out to people. And the response is a lot of people are talking, but they're not just talking about it, they're saying this is a really, really good game. This is really, really excellent. To the point that there seems to be a massive demand for Wingspan. To the point that Jamie Stonemaier puts out a blog saying, distributors, we need to talk about, the current kind of manufacturing climate and generating enough copies of Wingspan so they go out to everybody that's kind of out there. I mean, obviously there's some precedent with Jamie. I mean, he obviously, as I say, Scythe, Viticulture, Euphoria, Charterstone. I mean, he creates really, really good games. Were you expecting it just to be kind of like, wow, everybody's really, really liking what they're playing, and all you're hearing is kind of like positive feedback?
I mean, I expected people to like it, but, I was fairly confident in it. But there's a lot of good games out there. Yeah. I didn't expect Tom Vassell to put out a review and be like, this is a serious contender for best game, one of the best 10 games of the year, and it's only January. Like, where the hell did that come from? That's something you just can't expect, right? I could just
imagine that. It's just like that. Elizabeth, Tom Vassell's done a video. I know, but look at the eggs. Click. 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 They never fall down. I know, but Tom Vassell said it. I don't care, look. Click. Kind of thing. But then, of course, it got to the point you can't get a copy anywhere now. It's kind of like seems to be sold out. It's impossible. What's light blue and invisible? My copy of Wingspan. I'm just saying, I'm not being kind of judgmental or anything like that. I'm usually a wait and seer anyway. I like to see how things kind of settle down kind of after the piece, and it does look really, really
So what you're saying is we're having this whole conversation and you've never played one of my games. Great.
What I'm saying is we're having this whole conversation, and there's a lot of people I haven't played a lot of their games either. Right. So it's not a case this is a new thing. Right. As I say, I can talk to lots of people. It doesn't necessarily mean I've played a lot of their games. Isaac Vega, when he was on, he was one of the rare ones that have actually played their games. Everybody else, don't know. Stephen Bonacor was on the other day, and I not only had played his game, but I didn't like it. That was a bit awkward.
I think that would be even worse. Yeah,
that was a bit awkward though. Then. I kind of joked on that, but it was a bit awkward. No, but I can't play. How could I have played any of your games if Wingspan's not really available? There's a shortage.
But yeah, I mean, I feel for Jamie in that post, he talked about how hard it is to gauge demand. And, at least with his games that he's put out, he's the designer, right? But here he was coming out with a game by a designer that no one had ever heard of. And on a theme that was kind of a risk. I mean, I think in the end, it has turned out to be a real asset for the game, especially because the theme drove such beautiful art. It's just eye candy. But, so he was taking a risk on a new designer and on an unusual theme. And so how many copies do you need? Who knows?
Exactly. I mean, and it's even if you go with a Stonemaier minimum, because he would have had a Stonemaier minimum and says, okay, we're going to order X number of copies, because he would have had, obviously, the previous games. Yeah, he would have done that. But then the buzz around it. Do you think it's because is it because it's quite tactile? Because it looks unusual when you get it to the table? It's going to be the people. Do you know what? I'll tell you what. When I saw it set up, for some reason it reminded me of Everdell.
Yeah,
just because there's a focus point. There's a focus point in it. You know, normally other games you don't have like a central focus point. I saw like the kind of almost like the kind of the bird box dice tower type thing, and then the eggs kind of sitting, lovely eggs sitting there, and I thought that, and then I remembered, Everdale's kind of, okay, it's completely different, completely separate, but there is a focus point. They've got the tree at the side of the board, which kind of like, it kind of piques interest and stuff like that. I mean, what is it? Just a case now sitting back and waiting? I mean, you're going to see how it sells. I mean, I take it this is going to be something that you're going to probably be sitting about in June, and people are going to still be waiting for copies. He's
already ordered another huge batch.
Wow.
So he printed 15,000 copies for the initial print run, or really 10, and then kind of got an inkling that it was going to be something and tacked some extras on. But and I don't want to give the wrong numbers. He sold a good chunk of those in the first week on his website, and then said, okay, I'm cutting off online sales. Everything else is going to distributors to go to all the local game stores that have also been taking pre-orders. But what I've heard from a couple stores, and what he said basically in his blog, is that those game stores then took more pre-orders than there were physical copies that were going to be out, able to be mailed to them by March 8th, and it's supposed to go out in retail. So I think in most locations on March 8th, when it is, the retail release date, all the copies are spoken for already, is my impression. But he's ordered another 15,000 copies that will be arriving in April-ish, I believe. And then that, I think, will probably soak up a bunch more of the demand, and then we'll see where we go from there. I am very happy not to be in any of that decision-making process. Again, I'm not my bag. I'm so happy to have someone else worrying about it.
Just avoiding those meetings like a plague, even Jamie saying,
I don't even have to avoid them. It is not my job.
But, I mean, to put it into perspective, okay, is that 15,000? I mean, it's usually on a Kickstarter. It's a minimum order of usually 1,000 for a manufacturer. Right. And I think, this is putting this completely into perspective. Is like, that's how many you're expected to make. The manufacturer won't touch you unless you kind of, you're kind of bringing in those numbers. If we do like a comparison, and I'm just kind of bringing this in just from the sideways, our good friends Mark and Tom and Lacey at Orange Nebula, they're running their Vindication board game kind of expansion Kickstarter, and they're almost at $450,000 worth of pledges, and that's about 6,100 backers. Right. So if you, right. that's
the scale is
just
mind blowing.
It's just
and
kind of phenomenal.
I never had a conversation with Jamie early on about like, okay, how many copies are we talking about? I happened to hear in passing a few months, like sometime last summer or fall, he was on some podcast that I happened to listen to when he said his minimum print run was 10,000 copies, and my jaw just dropped. I didn't actually realize that we were talking about that kind of volume for Wingspan. I didn't know. Because I'm used to seeing those sort of Kickstarter level numbers. You know?
Used to seeing 300, 600 copies in them.
People are just happy to have their games out in the world, right? And great.
Exactly.
Yes.
And then they're taking the extra copies to kind of like Gen Con to sell, or Origins to sell, or to Eschen Spiel to sell. I mean, to be in the level that you're on is kind of like, it's a case of, okay, so you've got, what are you going to do for your second album, the second difficult album? I mean, obviously,
there is a little bit of that feeling, isn't there?
It's kind of like, what do you do next?
I was just thinking about this the other day, right? So when I got out of school, I got a job with the Department of Health and Human Services here in DC, and then I went and I worked on Capitol Hill for a few years, and that was like my dream job.
Yeah.
Right? Like something that I have been thinking about since high school. I was always very politically active. And by the age of 30, I was like, wow, I had my dream job and I hate it. I have to get out of here. And now I'm like, okay, great. So my first game, this dream that I've had for years and years, is now like this smash hit. Now what do I do?
What is it? I mean, I don't know. I think your next game has to be like completely different. Like, I think you should go like kind of dark magic, Cthulhu, heavy death metal rock skirmish game.
I will promise you right now that I am never going to make a game about Cthulhu. It's not going to happen. Well, and in a sense, Tussie Mussy will be like the complete opposite, right? It's like this tiny little game.
Exactly. But then again, if you think about it...
But still, this very pleasant, natural theme. That's just me.
Well, just imagine the Kickstarter page. You don't actually need to put anything on it. You just have to put from the creator of Wingspan. Instantly fund it. Stick a card with a bird in it.
I think, I mean, that's such an interesting phenomenon, isn't it? Because, I mean, some designers do really sort of have a body of work, and each game that you can play by them is noticeably in their style, and so they're often very similar weight.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe once I've published many games, you'd be able to say that about some chunk. Like, I do have sort of a natural weight and theme type, and maybe mechanics type stuff that I gravitate towards, but boy, you won't be able to say it with Wingspan and Tussie Mussy. They could not be more different.
Do you feel a little bit of pressure?
Except maybe on theme.
Do you feel a little bit of pressure?
No, I mean, it's a sweet little game. Yeah. It's a sweet little game, and people will enjoy it or they won't. It's like, and it's such a small game at a low price point. Like, no one's going to be like, oh, I can't believe I spent $15 or whatever button charges for,
All you need to do...
I was expecting Wingspan.
Just put a Wingspan promo card in and they'll just... fly out the door.
Oh my god.
They go daft for that kind of thing. But then, on the other side, you do get designer developers that they say they have their success and they stay within kind of what they've been doing. I mean, going back to Jamie, you could have the argument that in terms of base mechanics, there's not a huge... I can see the roots from... say, between viticulture and scythe in terms of the general base kind of mechanics, the kind of the worker placement style thing of it. Charterstone, again, worker placement, except on the legacy level. Are you kind of saying, well, I'm going to stay within these level of mechanics, or do you think, well, actually, I maybe want to do something completely different for let's say your third game, okay?
Yeah, so I'm in the process of pitching a game right now. Actually, I just went to the post office this morning.
Really?
And that is all about moving pieces around on a map.
That's all you're going to say, isn't it? That's all you're going to say.
There's a little bit of an engine to it, but it's quite different.
Has this opened up you just said, I've discovered I was like kind of at 30 years old, I was in a job and I really didn't like, and it was my dream job. But has this opened you up to the possibility of saying, well, actually, this could be a career opportunity, or it could be at least something which allows me to kind of do what I do on a day job on a part-time basis and spend a lot of my time kind of being kind of like a, successful board game designer?
Yeah, I mean, so the answer to that question is more complicated than you anticipated when you asked it, because I had already gone part-time in my job before I started designing Wingspan, I think.
Ah, right.
Yeah. Which is what gave me some of the time to do it. I don't know, it's complicated because I'm freelance now.
Yeah.
And so it's like this very, like, more than full-time, and then weeks when I don't have anything going on. Freelance work is wacky like that, and you just have to kind of roll with it and know that I had built up a big cushion before I went for that jump, but that was not directly related to game design. I wouldn't say it was unrelated. I wanted more control over my schedule, and I wanted to charge higher rates, and there are good things about going freelance, but yeah, so I don't know. Game design is definitely taking up more and more of my free time, and I haven't totally figured out what it would look like to create more free time by ramping down my consulting even more.
Yeah.
It's hard to get completely out of that income stream. It's a pretty nice one. But
I suppose if you're kind of used to, I suppose if it means cutting down the hours means kind of like, well, it has a major impact on your finances. Right. I mean, it's, unless you have got that cushion. I mean, that's why so many creators have jobs, because there are going to be kind of the famine and the feast type things, and as long as you've kind of like got a steady income, so you can at least afford sandwiches, then it's all kind of good, and it's all kind of fine.
And I don't think I would want to get to the point with games where I felt pressure that I had to do a certain number of them in a certain time frame.
Yeah.
Like I like just being done when I'm done and finding someone to pitch it to.
Yeah, and there's also the reputation.
I don't want to feel pressure.
And your success, isn't it, as well? Because, everybody has, they say everybody's got a good game in, everybody's got a board game in them. Some of them might not necessarily set the world on fire. And there's that thing where you could do, you could just be doing a string of success after success after success. Or you could have one where you could have a bump in the road, and then you're like, oh, what do I do now? I better get back on the kind of the freelancing. With you being kind of more involved in the industry, as I say, has that meant that you're playing more games? Have you got a substantial collection now of games? Do you even need to worry about buying games? Are people just sending you stuff left, right, and centre? I mean, is your doorbell constantly going?
They're definitely not sending me. Does that happen? Could I just people like Wingspan and they just start sending me presents?
I think
awesome.
That has to be a thing. Is there any games? Is there any games in a hypothetical sense? Is there any games that if you could have? Is there any games that you would like to have in your collection that maybe people listening could make that happen?
I actually have a fairly small collection.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a Marie Kondo acolyte. I know she's getting a lot of hate right now with her new TV show. I haven't actually watched the TV show, but the whole concept of like wanting everything in a collection to be something that you are like excited about. I really like, and my husband is not a huge gamer also, so we have sort of a gender reversed household for most people's gaming experience, I think. So I try, we have a fixed amount of shelf space devoted to board games, and if I want to bring a new board game in at this point, I need to get rid of something. And,
really?
There's some ways to fudge that, but I like that concept too of like, if I'm bringing something, I have a finite amount of time to play games, right? And actually, that's another thing that I did not realize when I started designing games. It really cuts into the amount of time you have to play published games, because you're spending a ton of time playtesting.
Exactly. I mean, you're saying to me, oh, you've never played one of my games. It's like, well, I don't have time to play games because we're currently having a conversation about your game. So it's Inception, isn't it? I'd like to.
How should you really be spending this hour?
I'd like to be playing Wingspan, but first of all, right, I don't have a copy of the game. Okay, due to whatever. Okay. Secondly, I can't be playing the game anyway, because otherwise you'd be like, listen to the podcast.
I wouldn't be talking to you.
Hello. Well, here's me shuffling about in the background, me going, just look at these eggs. They're just like. Every time.
Don't roll off the table.
Don't even roll off the table. But I mean, in kind of going forward, are you thinking expansions and stuff like that for Wingspan?
We are. I'm actively working on one.
Wow.
Jamie has The only thing that is public is that we are thinking about them in terms of doing one expansion per continent.
Have you thought about...
Because all of the birds in the base game are North American birds.
I was going to say...
So now I have started, a new set.
I was going to say, are you going to do the Monty Python one where you have a kind of a swallow?
The dead parrot?
No, I was going to think the African and European swallow, and which one can carry a coconut.
There should be a way to work in a reference to that somehow.
That has to be.
I would think. The dead parrot might be a little harder.
I think the dead it's just you get that card in your hand and it's like, nah, it doesn't do anything, mate. Except what happens is it does something for the first 5 minutes and then it's just, its mechanics no longer work. It's a timed card. And you can't return it to your hand easily. You can't return it back to the deck kind of easily. You've got to do certain things in order to get rid of it. I have no idea. I'm just going off in some.
This is feeling like a promo card.
It is feeling like a promo card.
Happen.
It definitely
Jamie has
could
been known to do sort of fan generated.
He did. Oh well, yeah. I mean,
like
Scythe has got entire content.
My little Scythe.
Yeah, I mean, and there was also some of the expansions were based around people kind of approaching him in expansion. So I think either the dead parrot or the African European swallow thing from Monty Python is a definite goer. That's all I'm saying. You heard it first here. Oh my goodness. For people that are wanting to keep an eye on kind of what you're up to in the kind of the hobby, where do we find you on the interweb nets?
So I, for board game stuff, am most active on Twitter. And my Twitter handle is my name, except my name is too damn long. So it's only the first 4 letters of my first name. So it's at Elizabeth Hargrave.
There you go.
And then for Wingspan, there's an incredibly active Facebook group.
Right, okay.
It has like 3,000 people in it, and they are posting pictures of the game and also just random pictures of birds. It's awesome.
That must be so cool, kind of going on there and saying, like, 4 years ago this was just an idea, and look at it, there's a Facebook. I mean, there's a Facebook group there of like doing all different types. That must be so cool and also weird at kind of like the same time.
It's very weird. Yes, it is both of those things.
Awesome.
I mean, there's so many awesome parts of it. I mean, so there's like this set of people who are like, oh my god, I can't believe Jamie Stonemaier is publishing a game about birds. That is the most ridiculous thing, but it's Jamie Stonemaier, so I'm going to take a chance on it. And then like, oh my god, it's awesome. I love birds now. So that's been really fun. And then there's this set of people that are like, games and birds are my 2 hobbies. They're the only things that I care about, and I love you forever. That's awesome. It's just, there's like all these little subsets of the population in this Facebook group. It's really fun.
That's fantastic. So, Wingspan's officially out on 8th of March. Good luck getting hold of one if you've not pre-ordered.
Yes, but April, they should be more
definitely.
in circulation.
Should be more in April, but I was going to say good luck if you've pre-ordered one as well, because you might turn up. It's like, God.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of stores took more pre-orders than they are going to have copies in March, and they will have to figure out how to handle that. Presumably, first come, first ordered, first served.
I know.
I'll leave that up to them.
Absolutely,
not my job.
Absolutely. Thank you very, very much for coming on.
Absolutely.
This has been a lot of fun. For everybody who's been listening, if you want to keep an eye on what we're up to, then you can go to the internet webs, and if you search for We're Not Wizards, you'll find us. You'll find us on our website, we'renotwizards.com. You'll find us on Twitter, We're Not Wizards. Facebook, We're Not Wizards. You'll find us on YouTube, We're Not Wizards Tabletop Podcast. You'll find us on Instagram, We're Not Wizards. You'll find us on, you can email us, which is magic@we'renotwizards.com if you want to. If you like what you've heard, you can continue to follow us for whatever reason. through the podcast catchers that are available, your Stitchers, your Spreakers, your Acasts, and Pod Knives and Pod Beans and all those wonderful, fantastic things. If you have liked what you've listened to tonight, then you can do two things. Tell somebody else, basically. The other thing you can do is if you jump onto Apple Podcasts, then you can drop us a rating or a review. And as we normally say, if you are going to be giving us a rating or a review, don't give us 10 stars because it makes us big-headed. But don't give us 1 star because it makes us cry. Give us something in the middle, like a 5, because it's average. We're just a little bit average. But the person who's not been average tonight is the rather wonderful, rather fantastic, the suddenly successful. I'm not going to sing the song. Elizabeth Hargrave, thank you very, very much for coming on.
Thank you so much.
And there's only 2 more things to do. The first thing is to remember that we are many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, Elizabeth?
We are not wizards.
There you go. And the other thing to do is to say goodbye. So it's a goodbye from Elizabeth. Say goodbye, Elizabeth.
Goodbye.
And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll6s.com. And if you can get a game of Wingspan, if you can get a copy of Wingspan, if you can get a look at some photographs of some Wingspan just now, do it, because it sounds like everybody I know that's played it says it's really, really good, and I still don't have a copy. But maybe next time I will. But until the next time, goodbye.
A wizard is never late. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.